Dear students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. Today in this module, we will be discussing about the factors influencing waste generation and the various environmental and health hazards which are associated with waste dumping in an open area. To begin with, solid waste is any unwanted or useless material which is just thrown out into the external environment. Now, there are a lot of sources from which these wastes are generated by the human and animal activity. The sources can be a residential, commercial, institutional, industrial, biomedical, or any health centers, and also other industries like e-waste is also considered as one of the sources. So, there are many sources from where waste is being generated, and this is aggravated by the population growth, urbanization and industrialization. In India, if you see, around 0.8 kilogram of waste is generated per person. Now, this value is increasing and will increase enormously in coming years. Now, there are a lot of factors which are playing a major role in influencing the waste generation. Some of them can be the geographical location, the lifestyle, the economic status of an individual, also the seasons, the topography and other factors which are influencing the waste generation. Now, after this, at the end of this, we will also discuss about what are the various environmental as well as the health problems that arise due to the waste disposal and the waste generation. So, the learning objectives of this module include to analyze the various factors that influence the waste generation, to understand the various environmental effects caused by the waste generation and disposal, and finally to gain knowledge about the various health hazards associated with waste generation and disposal. To begin with, first you should understand what is waste generation. The waste generation is defined as the rate of change of quantity of solid waste generation with respect to stipulated time. There are a number of factors which contribute to waste generation. One is your geographical location, customs, that is your lifestyle, your economic status, the climate and season, the living condition, the economic standard of an area. Now, the characteristics, quantity, volume and composition of solid waste generated may differ from one country to country and from region to region and from rural to urban areas. Now, how population influences your waste generation? Population is one important factor which governs the waste generation. The increasing population will always increase the rate of waste generation. Highly populated countries show high per capita waste generation. The population density also influences the waste generation quantity. Higher the population density, more is the quantum of waste generation. For example, the developed countries tend to generate more waste because of abundance of goods which results in high waste generation. Also, age is another important factor that leads to waste generation. The location, for example, the urban area or the rural area also influences the waste generation to a great extent. People generally migrate from rural area to urban areas in search of employment and education opportunities. Urbanization and industrialization is also one important reason for people to migrate from the rural and the urban area. In India, it is estimated that about 1 lakh people migrate every day from rural to urban areas, leading to a rate of migration of about 3.6% per year. The waste generation is high in urban areas when compared to rural areas. For example, in urban area, they generate many type of waste, namely the papers, plastic, food waste, packing materials, electronic waste and many more. Whereas in rural areas, the type and amount of waste generation is very minimum, because hardly they would generate the farm waste, agriculture waste or biodegradable waste. In an urban area, everything comes in a packed material. For example, simple, if you have to visit or if you have to buy a food product, it comes in a well packed box. So if you discard or dispose of these boxes, again it is adding to a waste. This is just one example. In addition to that, people living in the urban areas, they are exposed to a lot of gadgets, electronic gadgets. And recent times, if you see, very frequently people keep changing their mobiles and other electronic gadgets. So which also results in the e-waste generation. These are some of the examples. In addition to that, you also have many reasons for the waste generation in the urban areas. Now, economic status or the lifestyle also influences waste generation to a great extent. The high income group or the high income country, they generate high amount of waste. Higher the income rate and the rate of urbanization, greater would be your solid waste generation. With increase in the income, the consumption of goods also increases, which ends up in a huge quantum of waste. For example, packaging material, clothes, paper, electronic gadgets, furnitures are a part of a high income society, and they keep changing it frequently and thereby ending up in more amount of waste. The geographical location plays a role in generation of your yard and the agricultural waste. In locations where the autumn season exists or it predominates, you can see a lot of yard waste generation. For example, during autumn, there is the leaves fall and new leaves starts coming up. So, thereby generating a lot of yard waste. And in northern part of India, during the months of February and March, you can see again yard waste generation to be very high. Now, harvest season will result in the generation of high amount of agricultural waste. Geographical location can always be interlinked to the collection frequency. A place that is located at a higher altitude might show a waste accumulation due to reduced collection frequency. For example, if the collection frequency is very less, like for example, once in a week if you start collecting your waste, then the accumulation of waste will also be very high. The places of tourist importance, they also generate a high amount of waste during the seasons. For example, the tourist season might vary. During summers, people tend to visit the hill stations. So that might be the season when the waste generation might be high. The other months of the year, it will be less. Now, seasons, the rate of waste generation and its composition varies with season. As I mentioned earlier, harvest season, you tend to have more quantity of agricultural waste. In summers, the waste generation will be high when compared to winter. High temperature also might lead to faster decomposition of the eatables and vegetables, and hence you have to remove it or clean it much faster. This can also be one of the reasons for increased waste generation. And as I told you, seasons which favor tourism also play a factor for increased waste generation. Next, the public attitude also plays a role in waste generation. When the attitude of the public to change their habits and lifestyle may lead to reduced waste generation. Like for example, buying of clothes more than required, wasting food items, the frequent replacement of household items, mobile phones, electronic gadgets can be some of the reasons for increased waste generation. When a person thinks like this is leading to an environmental or health concern, maybe they can reduce the waste generation, and this will happen only when the attitude of the people changes. The change in public attitude might reduce the waste generation. Next, the legislation or laws. Strict laws might reduce the quantity of waste generation. Existence of local and state regulations, at least for the use and disposal of specific items, might reduce the quantum of waste. For example, the Indian rules control the generation of packing materials and plastics. Maybe in future, the packing materials or plastic waste can reduce. Now, this is all about the factors influencing waste generation. Now, we will look into the various environmental effects that are caused due to the waste generation and disposal. Now, as you all know, the environmental effects or the environmental matrices like the water, air and soil are continuously being polluted by the waste generation as well as disposal. Now, waste generation, its improper disposal has resulted in a number of environmental effects like the effect on air, water, land, soil and noise. To begin with, let us discuss about the water pollution. Now, improper waste management, that is when you open dump the waste in an uncontrolled area, it will result in disturbing or destroying your water quality, both your surface as well as your groundwater quality. You all know that the waste, it contains some amount of moisture, and when it starts degrading or decomposing, it releases a watery liquid which oozes out due to the field capacity called as your leachate. Now, this leachate, when it oozes out or when it flows, it slowly infiltrates into the soil and slowly it reaches the groundwater and thereby affecting the groundwater quality. When it rains over the waste, this again leads to the leaching of pollutants into the surface runoff, and when it gets mixed with the surface water, it pollutes the rivers, streams and lakes. Eutrophication and loss in water quality is also a consequence of the waste generation and disposal. The entry of leachate will alter the pH of groundwater. When the pH is varied, the dissociation of minerals in the aquifers will occur, which will lead to increased loss in water quality. The contamination can spread also depending on the characteristic of the aquifers, especially when you have a sand or gravel aquifer. Soil plays a great role in restricting the movement of ions into the groundwater. Clay soil might restrict the movement of ion by capturing them in the soil matrix. Now, about the soil pollution, open dumping of waste without any liners or other protection causes the entry of pollutants into the soil. The pollutants might bind to the soil and minerals and increase the pollutant level in the soil. The accumulation of metals in the soil will reduce its productivity, leading to its microbial diversity loss. Metals like cadmium, copper, nickel, lead and zinc will alter the chemistry of the soil. The pH of the soil is also disturbed by the waste. Again, the variation of pH in soil will result in the loss of various minerals and which will in turn affect the soil. Vegetation is also affected when the waste is dumped, because the pollutants or heavy metals in soil will get absorbed through the root system into the plants, and the pollutant will hinder the normal metabolism of plant, and it will lead to invisible injuries which might lead to plant death at a later stage. Now, poor vegetation is also observed in places where you start dumping your waste for years together. Sometimes the waste dumping also affects the entire ecosystem. The surrounding air is affected by the emission of the methane, carbon dioxide and other oxides of sulfur and nitrogen during the waste decomposition. Emissions alter the air quality initially on a local level and then on a regional level. Burning of waste in an open area might release the particulate matter and also other harmful carcinogens like the PCDFs, that is furans and dioxins. Now, this might be carcinogenic and it will affect the health of an individual. The polychlorinated dibenzofurans, commonly called as the dioxins and furans, they are released during the burning of plastics and they show a significant carcinogenic and mutagenic properties. Incinerators without these air pollution control devices like the cyclone separators or bagasse filters, they will lead to the release of particulate matter, which is the fly ash. And also, if you don't have a scrubber or absorption unit, it will result in the release of various gases, which might lead to harmful effects. Now, noise pollution, again, it is caused during the transport of vehicles carrying the waste. Now, vehicles and machineries used in waste processing will be the main source of noise pollution. The impact of noise pollution can be reduced by proper maintenance of this machinery and vehicles, like proper servicing, regular maintenance will minimize the noise generated. In addition to that, you can also provide the workers handling with these machineries and vehicles with earmuffs to protect them. Also, you can build green belts around these areas so that the noise level can be reduced. Now, uncontrolled dumping might also affect the aestheticity of the site. It creates a visual hindrance to the trespassers and the individuals living in a nearby locality. The beauty of the town is being lost when you see an open dump. Dumping or temporary storage of waste might lead to odor problem due to decomposition of waste. The odor problem can be minimized by increasing the collection frequency from storage sites. The containment of waste in controlled landfill can also minimize the odor problem. Now, the health effects, as I told you earlier, the waste generation, dumping or disposal also results in a number of health effects. Now, waste disposal in open dumps for a long period of time in the collection site or storing it in a processing site and improper handling and management might lead to a number of health effects for both the human beings as well as the animals. A lot of occupational health hazards are also faced during accidents, waste transport and processing. Some of the health effects are discussed here, like for example, the waste dumps act as a storehouse of infective organisms and pathogens. They provide suitable environment and food for their growth. So, the workers, when they come in contact with the waste, are affected with various diseases. Now, the flies, mosquitoes, stray animals such as the rats, cats, dogs, cows, pigs, they can act as a carrier and bring the infection to the residential area and can affect the population living in the towns and cities. Epidemics can also spread by these carriers as they act as vectors and transport these pathogens to the human beings. The typhoid, salmonellosis, gastroenteritis, dysentery, malaria, filaria and dengue are some of the popular diseases caused by the flies and mosquitoes. Generally, these waste act like area where an insect completes its life cycle. The flies generally lay eggs in a warm, moist environment of decomposing waste. The organic content will serve as a food for the larva, and once they mature, they migrate from the waste to the soil before transforming to a pupa. Now, the pupa remains dormant in soil and once again they migrate to other area after it becomes an adult fly. Thus, the entire life cycle of a fly or an insect occurs in a waste pile. Now, proper cleaning of storage bins and frequent collection and dumping of waste in controlled environment might avoid infections associated with flies. Proper covering of the waste material also can avoid its breeding. Accumulation of water in broken furniture, tires, broken vessel, tins and cans should be avoided so that the breeding grounds can be destroyed. Proper sanitary practices and cleanliness can eliminate the mosquito problem. Roaches like typhoid, cholera, amoebiasis are the infections which are caused by roaches. Poor management of solid waste are the result of these infections. Rats and other rodents which cause the spread of diseases like plague, typhus, leptospirosis, histoplasmosis, rat bite fever, salmonellosis, trichinosis and other diseases are caused by these rats. Now, waste dumps act as a source of food and shelter for these rodents. If you manage it properly, these can be avoided. Now, pigs are involved in the spread of diseases and they generally transmit through the infected pork eaten either in a raw state or improperly cooked manner. The solid waste when fed to pigs should be properly treated, otherwise it might cause infections to the animal. As I told you earlier, a lot of occupational health hazards also occur due to the waste generation and disposal, and some of them are the sharps or syringes, broken glasses, blades in the waste causes cut to the workers involved in collecting and transporting the waste. Storage containers which has these sharp edges might cause injury and it can result in occupational hazard. Infections of skin and blood results from direct contact with waste and previously infected area and wounds. Dust from the waste material affects your eye on exposure, and also diseases are spread through animal bites. Inhalation of gases during burning of waste can lead to the respiratory diseases and cancer. Now, there are a lot of accidents which occur due to waste handling. For example, loading, unloading and carrying of waste containers might lead to muscle wear and tear, bone and muscle disorders, dust in roads and during smoke which arises due to burning of waste can reduce the visibility and might cause accident. Chemical burns can occur when workers are exposed to small amount of hazardous materials like your pesticides, cleaning solutions and other solvents used in household and commercial establishments. The methane explosion in landfill sites is again a major threat of accident. Careless dumping of lead acid, nickel, cadmium and mercuric oxide batteries might also affect the children and adults. To summarize, at the end of this module, we have studied about the various factors which are influencing the waste generation, like starting from your geographical location, your season, climate, then your public attitude, economic status, lifestyle and so on. Then we discussed about the various environmental and health effects which are associated due to improper generation, due to improper management of waste, like the waste generation, disposal and during treatment. So, to avoid all these environmental and various health hazards, it is essential for us to manage the waste properly, to collect them, dispose it in a safe manner and treat them in a proper way with proper pollution control devices, and that will lead or avoid the various health and environmental effects. Thank you.